My name is Captain Joshua Sherrard. It's Schirard. I'm the Public Information Officer and the Operations Bureau Commander here at the Galveston Police Department. On Friday, October 20th, 2017, the Galveston Police Department recovered the body of a 3 to 4-year-old male child on the beach near the 700 block of Seawall Boulevard. When found, the child was in the water near the shoreline and was found unclothed. At the time of the discovery, no family or friends were present to claim or identify the child. The Galveston Police Department subsequently launched an investigation to identify this child and the circumstances surrounding his death. The Galveston Police Department immediately reached out to local law enforcement agencies as well as the Coast Guard to determine if there had been any recent reports of missing children. Searches were also conducted in local, state, and national databases looking for reports of missing children matching this boy's description. However, those searches proved no promising results. We immediately reached out to the public to gather any information we could, releasing a sketch of the child in hopes that someone would recognize the boy, nicknamed Little Jacob. Over the following weeks, with the assistance of the FBI and the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services, detectives have pursued and exhausted hundreds of tips and leads, but little Jacob still remains unidentified. Evidence found and collected at the scene during the autopsy is limited. DNA samples have been collected and submitted to multiple labs in hopes of identifying the boy. Unfortunately, these methods have been unable to assist with the identification, as children of this age do not usually have fingerprints or DNA on file. At this stage of the investigation, it is believed that little Jacob died around October 17th to 18th, 2017. Based on reverse drift analysis conducted by the U.S. Coast Guard and the National Weather Service, it is believed that little Jacob's body was put into the water locally in the Galveston County area. Information obtained at autopsy also shows that little Jacob was deceased prior to going into the water and that he did not die from drowning. The child's body appeared to have been in the water 12 to 48 hours, and autopsy results indicate that prior to his death, little Jacob showed signs of neglect and injuries consistent with abuse. However, none of those injuries appears to have been fatal. At this time, a cause of death is yet to be determined. The Galveston Police Department and its partners will continue to treat this case as a homicide until it can otherwise be ruled out. Further investigation is needed to find out what happened to little Jacob, and the first and most crucial step in that investigation is identifying him. In an effort to exhaust all possible routes to identify little Jacob, the Galveston Police Department is now releasing a photograph of the boy in hopes that someone seeing the true likeness of this child will confirm their suspicions that they know who this is and that they can help us identify him and the circumstances surrounding his death. We continue to believe that someone out there knows this child. Someone has seen him. That child deserves to be identified and properly laid to rest, but for this to happen, input from the public is absolutely crucial. The FBI is offering a $10,000 reward for the successful identification and location of the family members caring for this young boy at the time of his disappearance. If you have any information regarding the identity or circumstances surrounding the death of little Jacob, please call 1-800-CALL-FBI. We're now going to be releasing to you the photograph, and it's important to note that this is an actual photograph of the child that was found on the beach in October. Like I said in the statement, our hopes is that showing the actual likeness of the child will convince somebody that what they may have thought they knew is actually what they know, and that they will actually be able to identify that child. What I'll do is, if it's easiest for you guys, I can tape it up here on the podium, so that way you guys can get shots. At that point, we'll take questions. Jeff, you'll come up here. Help field some of these as they come in.
Talk a little bit about reverse drift analysis, what that is. how you came about this conclusion?
Yeah, absolutely. So we utilize the Coast Guard National Weather Service anytime that we have any kind of missing person that we believe may have gone missing in the water or was last seen near the water. The Coast Guard has a lot of tools that can kind of help us figure out where that person may have gone, and then conversely, it can help us figure out where a person may have come from. It has to do with the tidal flows as well as currents that come in and out of Galveston. Galveston has some fairly unique currents with its geography, its topography of how the ocean floor is very shallow here. It gets very shallow very quickly, as well as the jetty configuration, all contribute to how that current reacts around Galveston. So they're generally very very consistent when they tell us, where tides may take something or where that something may have come from. So this is a technique that we've used, several times in the past. I mean, that we use a lot in order to help us identify, like I said, if people go missing, where they may have gone, and then conversely where they may have come from.
You said he showed signs of abuse and neglect. Can you elaborate? Like cuts, bruises?
I don't think we're really prepared to elaborate at this time. A lot of that is going to come. A lot of that is being. We want to make sure that we don't give too much away to hinder the investigation in the future.
And you narrowed it down to 3 to 4 years old as opposed to 3 to 5?
Correct. With autopsy results, it's looking to be between 3 and 4 years old.
What can you tell us about why you believe he was killed before he was put in the water?
You want to address that with autopsy results?
During the autopsy, the medical examiner didn't see any water in his lungs or any water in his respiratory system that would have been consistent with a drowning. And so it's his opinion that he didn't die as a result of drowning.
Did the analysis show whether he would have drifted from east or west of where he was found?
He would have come from the east and come to the west. So he most likely from the east of where he was found out towards East Beach, possibly up towards Ship Channel area.
Do you know how long he was in the water?
12 to 48 hours.
Cause of death, do you have, after the autopsy, an idea?
We still have nothing. It's undetermined. There's nothing that's obviously a fatal injury. There's no sickness that we're seeing that would be consistent with causing a fatality. It's just going to take us figuring out who he is and getting a timeline of what happened to him in the time before his death to determine how that happened.
You said he appeared to be neglected. Was he severely underweight for his age?
Yes.
Can you tell us how much he weighed, and can you tell us about that?
I believe he weighed
26, 27 pounds.
somewhere around 28 pounds, 26 or between 26 and 30 pounds.
And about how much does a child, that age normally weigh?
From my understanding, that's about half of what he should weigh.
How tall?
He is right at 3 foot.
Can you talk a little bit more about this picture? Is that one from the scene that night when you all first responded?
Yes, sir.
That's what he looked like as you discovered.
The photo has been altered a little bit. When he was discovered at the scene, he did have a little bit of early stages of decomp and damage from the water. And those have been edited out of this picture to make it a little more appropriate, if that's the proper word, I guess.
So as a detective, when you look at this sort of thing, obviously this touches everyone. You talk about how you come to the conclusion that, yes, we need to release this picture. Very unusual.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Well, I mean, we released the sketch. We've been taking leads as they come in. We've exhausted almost all those leads. And a lot of the tips I've been getting have all started off the same, where the caller will say something to the effect of, "I don't think this is relevant," or "I don't want to waste your time." And I obviously I encourage you, you're not wasting my time, call. But exact for them to be certain, and they might think they're wasting our time and not be calling. So I want them to call. And we're really out of other options. I mean, the most important thing is that we get them identified. And I hate to release that photo. That's terrible. But I think at the end of the day, the objective of identifying them outweighs.
Are you waiting on anything else from the medical examiner? Or?
Not at this point. Once we get some additional information later on in the investigation, figure out who he is and what happened with him, then we'll go back to the medical examiner's office and review those facts to add those pieces into the puzzle and try to determine what happened to him.
No test about sickness or anything like that? So.
Nothing that appeared to be fatal or cause of death.
Any indication that he may have been involved in or connected in any way to human or drug trafficking?
We can't. I couldn't say either way. I mean, there's no indication one way or the other.
A couple of weeks ago, another department was using familial DNA to locate a murder suspect. Do you all use those techniques?
And that's something we're still looking into. We're currently making phone calls on that and trying to see if we can work that out.
Anything else, guys?
Can you talk a little bit more about DNA analysis and whether or not you figure that's a fruitful avenue to pursue? Maybe comparing this to, say, other offenders in prison. You have CODIS database. Could you run his DNA through that and see if that comes back with it? Or have you already?
It's being run right now. As far as family member stuff goes, or familial DNA, there's laws that say what can and can't be run. And we're trying to work with the lab and the CODIS to make sure that we can fall within those guidelines. We haven't come to an answer whether we're able to do that yet or not.
Can you say how much time you've spent investigating just this case?
I'd say with the exception of maybe a day or two, this has been the only case I've worked since October 20th.
And that's not, of course, and that's not to include that doesn't include all the partners that we've had with the FBI that have worked exhaustively, Department of Children and Family Services, Protective Services that have thrown resources and assets at the case as well. So I mean, it's a very all-inclusive case for a lot of people.
Can you describe how frustrating it's been working so hard and we still haven't been able to identify him and to identify who did this to him?
It's extremely frustrating. It's challenging to know, you're a detective, you want to solve the case, right? Well, where do you go when no one's coming and telling me what's happening? I got a little boy that no one's telling me who he is. I just hope that eventually we can identify him and we'll move forward and find out what happened to him.
So given the circumstances as you know them now, is it fair for us to conclude that the parents or whoever was caring for this child must have at least some knowledge that something happened? Since no one's come forward.
I'm not going to make any speculation. I would think that they're going to have some explaining to do why we're 3 months in and I haven't heard from them, but I don't know their situation. I don't know who's watching, who's responsible for the child. So once we figure that out, we'll talk to them and try to determine that. But I couldn't speculate as to that.
All right, guys, the statement will go out in a release here momentarily along with a copy of the photograph. Guys, and I want to reiterate, and Detective Banks touched on it, we're not releasing this photo lightly. This was a decision that was made between all parties that were involved and agreed upon, and it's really being done at this point as a last option, as we've exhausted all the other things that we can do to help get this child identified. So while it was definitely not up there with anything anyone wanted to do, and anything anyone would have chosen to do in any other instance, we are forced at this point to exhaust all options and all possibilities to get this child identified. If that means shocking the public, if that means releasing things that maybe aren't appropriate in some instances, well, then that's what it means. And it's an unfortunate reality, but it's our duty to make sure that we do exhaust those options. So, we understand that this is not something that's traditionally done, and it's not being done lightly, and we're not taking it lightly. So we appreciate your help and cooperation with that. So, but those will get released and sent out Other than that, I really appreciate you guys all being here and being attentive. So thanks, guys.
If there's any information coming in, please ask. The FBI is assisting in fielding those calls. So if anyone could call in to the 1-800-CALL-FBI phone number, that'd really help. Thank you.
Can you spell your name for us?
It's Jeff Banks, B-A-N-K-S.
Your
Jeff with a
rank
J.
and status?
Correct, J-E-F-F. And detective.